Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So looks like we are live. Just wanted to start a stream. If you can hear me, going to keep it quiet. Mainly because we got someone sleeping right outside my door, taking a little nap. But we are going to crank out a video today, and that video is going to be a course for a golf course. So it is going to be for Chris Cody's golf shop out of Southington, Connecticut, originally from Portland, Connecticut. Chris Cody's son Bryce is a friend of mine, and he had asked me to record a course for him on how to regrip clubs. And essentially, I'm going to hop in the edit and really just record how long it takes me. And me wanting to record the process, I figured why not just stream it and send him over the stream to show him how long it took at the end of it. And it's only 3 modules, so 3 sections of the course. It's not complete, but I'm gonna edit that. I'm gonna edit some drone footage, and I also have an event that I just downloaded from Google Drive that my friend sent me that he would like for me to edit. I believe it is some event that was sponsored by Taylor Swift and Uber. So we're gonna crack into that hopefully and get it all done. But it's also my grandma's birthday, so I'd want to see her. So I'm trying to get this all done somewhat quickly. So let's hop right into it. Let me go ahead and rename the stream real quick. If I can do that. Yeah, edit live stream number 5. Editing course for golf brand. Editing course for golf brand. And client work if we get to it. Great. All right. Looks good. Let's go ahead and just import the footage. So hopefully you guys. Hello. All right, I just want to make sure that the audio is working for me talking at this soft tone. So we are going to import the footage, we are going to organize the footage, and we are going to get editing the footage quite simply. And I also have drone footage of the shop. So yeah, just kind of just getting organized, sequencing it, which would kind of all fall under like that first pass of editing a project. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and just do that quick legwork so we can get ahead and be able to deliver this to Bryce in good time, in good fashion. So let's hop right into it. So to import, you can go to File, Imports, and then just find your clips here. Got it under Bryce, Day 2, FX3. That's all we shot on was the FX3. So you could do it that way. What I like to do is just go to my actual folder here, and I just drag and drop. I think it's much simpler. So coming here to Bryce and then clicking on it, and instead of selecting all the clips like I did before, it's a lot simpler to just drag in the whole folder. That way it's just cleaner in your assembly here in your project tab. And from day one, we ended up actually scrapping all of the footage we shot, which is fine. You know, we still got some cool behind the scenes. Shout out to my girl Livy behind the camera, and some cool photos and whatnot. But all we're gonna use from the first shoot is just the drone footage, so I'm just gonna pull that in as well. But all of this extra stuff we're probably gonna scrap. Yeah, some photos, FX3. Yeah, we're probably not gonna use that. We might use it as B-roll. So I actually, let's see here, 3. I actually might pull this in and then just rename this as day 1, because we did get some good B-roll from that. I'm just gonna do this, day 2. So, you know, when you actually dump the files from your SD card, it's good to keep it organized in a folder structure. So yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just make that first sequence by just taking it and just dragging it to the timeline. And it automatically creates a sequence from all of the clips from your footage. And then so now this is a new sequence here. You can tell by this little sequence icon. These are all your clips in the bin. So now you can rename your sequence. Just name this Bryce full. I'm gonna change this right there on the timeline. So let's go through that. I'm gonna plug in my headphones and just vibe, make some cuts, and just kind of talk to you guys throughout the process. But going to be quiet for the most part. Again, this is really just something new I'm trying to do. Not so much the live stream, but like recording my process and almost timing myself by using the stream to send to my client, to once I'm done delivering the product, but also being, hey, here is the behind the scenes of me editing the footage, and so you can understand the process and you can see how much went into it. It took me 2 hours, it took me 4 hours, it took me 5 hours. That way, when the time comes for me to invoice them or send the payment, they can understand more. Oh wow, those are all the things that went into it, you know. So yeah, let's go ahead and just start cranking this out. So first thing is first, let's go ahead and fix the audio, because the audio was recorded on this external mic. So hitting Shift C, I actually cleared the cache and reset all the settings on my Premiere Pro because it was acting up. So my keyboard shortcuts got deleted, but I can redo that. So audio channels, boom, boom, audio channels. So put it both on channel L. So now you get this on both channels. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and we're gonna make some cuts. Something I would highly recommend you do is labeling your clips, making them different colors. So like in my case, I will label them different colors depending on whether it's A-roll, B-roll, 24 FPS, 60 FPS, different modules. In this case, if it's module 1, module 2, you can just highlight them and click a number on your keyboard and that'll just change the color. I manually changed that keyboard shortcut in my settings.
Our epoxy workflow. First, and probably the most heavily used, I'm gonna pan around, see. Show you a little bit of the one. First, the grip scraper, but you can also use a torch to peel off the tape. Easily pull. We actually see a little bit of the non-epoxy workflow and the specific stations inside. This is just post a few reminders. This is easier to control. Aids and rotating tools. Build-ups. And just make one good. It to be a lot less efficient than just using the scraper. The other way to check is to turn it around and tamp it. You'll feel a way different until the grip solvent. Quick entry point for learning club repair. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you about measuring grips and how different grips and shafts interact. And you can also 0.96. If you're adding in low hand wraps, you can. Grips are pretty elaborate. This is my method. I like to start with a simple chart like this. Friendly. This is really just your starting point. It out of a professional. And then the tool start a favor. Do 3 pieces of tape. To use the torch to remove tape, this would be it. Gripping full swing clubs. In the left, we'll be going over. In the next module, we'll get into our other non-epoxy work, which will be our loft and lies. Take the quiz when you're ready, and then we'll see you in module our quality is strike. By the end, you'll know how to adjust and measure, if any adjustments are even needed. And this possibly get damaged. Numbers, if we're...
Let me know when the 2, yes, I am recording. Let me know when the 2, yes sir.
Still using Google, looking up loft, still using Google, you're still using Google or an OEM website to look up shit right there.
So good.
That's some good soup.
Literally that.
Yep. So, take the ball. And oh, damn, it's too straight. I might have this club a little proper way is. Net. Never hit a ball with a Sharpie line into a simulator screen, as the Sharpie line will stain that screen. Or if you're curious on brass in the club back test we just did. Pressure.
Yeah, this was an awesome shoot. Just gonna lower the volume on this a smidge. This was an awesome shoot. Now, so you can see it's sitting at 2 hours and 12 minutes. So it's gonna be a hefty one to edit. Let's see if we can kind of just speed run through it by hitting L on my keyboard and J to fast forward. So
3, 2.
Welcome to Chris Cody's Golf Shop. And
there we go.
3, 2.
welcome to Chris Cody's Golf Shop. And welcome to the online school of club repair. I'm so glad you decided to join us. My name is Bryce Cody, and if you're wondering, yes, my father is Chris. We're a family-owned business here in Connecticut, and have been building and fitting clubs since 2008. If you want to learn more about us, see the resource below. Let me tell you a little bit about how the course is laid out. Everything has been broken into modules, each one consisting of a few short video lessons, followed by a quick quiz at the end to help reinforce it.
So it really helps to just kind of look at these audio waveforms as you're editing.
Anything, but you'll know all the technical knowledge behind it as well. If you have your own tools or a shop at home, I highly encourage you to follow along. Throughout the lessons, you may see 4 icons. The first one is the safety icon, just to keep you aware of any potential hazards. second is the key concepts icon, which will highlight the main takeaways from every lesson. Main takeaways from every lesson. The second is the key concepts icon, which will highlight the main takeaways from every lesson. The second one is the key concepts icon, which will highlight the main takeaways from every lesson. Hazards. The second is the key. Will highlight the second one is the key concepts icon, which will highlight the main takeaways from every lesson. The third is the workshop wisdom icon, which is all the tips and tricks I've learned through experience, things that aren't normally taught. And last is common mistakes, which are the common faults I see beginners usually making. You can use on your own, see beginners usually making. Attached to some lessons, you may find some resources. These are here to help you out in the shop. They may range from extra information, charts, or even printouts you can use on your own. Look out for the tool list and glossary in the next lesson. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or topics that you want to see covered, please feel free to reach out. My goal is to make this the best, most practical resource to learn club repair. I can't do it without your help, so if you have any ideas, please let me know. With all that out of the way, I think it's time we can move on. In the next lesson, I'll take you on a quick shop tour to show you the layout, tools, and workflow I use every single day. See you there.
So this is all the intro, so I can just go boop, and just make that a different color. And I just want to see how the, just want to hear how the flow sounds. I hope it's not too jump cutty.
Golf shop. And welcome to the online school. Wondering? Yes, my father is Chris. We're a family-owned business here in Central Connecticut and have been building and fitting clubs below. Let me tell you a little bit about how the course is laid out. If you have your own tools or a shop at home, I highly encourage you to follow along. Throughout the lessons, you may see 4 icons appear on screen to help you out. The first one is the safety icon, just to keep you aware of any potential hazards. The second one is the key concepts icon, which will highlight the main takeaways from every lesson. The third is the workshop wisdom icon, which is all the tips and tricks I've learned through experience, things that aren't normally taught. And last is common mistakes, which are the common faults I see beginners usually make.
So I usually do this last, but I just want to see, so I usually shoot in log, which gives you a lot more flexibility in the color grade. However, here I shot it in raw and in 1080 because I knew I'd be shooting for so long and we'd be shooting so much material. And it doesn't need to be like super cinematic and clean because it's course content, right? So you can see the highlights on his face are pretty bright, so I just want to see if I can take those down. This is just like what's going on in my head. So lumetri, actually, let me not do that. Let me go to window, lumetri color, and there we go. So if we were to just come to this clip here, and I have these red light glasses on, so I'm not, it won't be perfect, but if I were to just drop this down, yeah, see, I think that's saving a lot. Even the shadows maybe a bit. Bring that contrast. Yeah, it's pretty blown out and you can't really see the text up there, which, you know, isn't the biggest issue. Yeah, see, when we even drop the whites, it helps out a lot too. Maybe we'll bring those shadows back a bit. And then drop those blacks. Maybe bring back a little contrast. Maybe drop the, no, we'll keep the exposure there. Add a little saturation. And I think that is already making for a much better image. So just so you can see, boom, without, with, just so you can kind of read what's on the board there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just go ahead and copy and paste that onto all the clips here, deselecting that one clip, and then hitting Command Option V. And then just taking that, boom, boom, boom. Great.
Welcome to Chris Cody's Golf Shop, and welcome to the online school.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best we're gonna get it. We definitely fixed his face. We didn't bring that back completely, but there was no way to get that. The light was literally right in front of it. You could barely see it with the naked eye. So yeah, we're just gonna go sequence settings. All right, that's looking good.
Feel free to reach out. My goal is to make this the best, most practical resource to learn club repair. And move on. In the next lesson, I will take you on a quick shop tour to show you the layout there.
Great.
One of the most underrated parts of being a good builder is just the way your shop is set up. Doing this right will be the key to efficiency and staying organized. In this lesson, I'm going to take you on a quick tour around my shop to show you how I do it. Hopefully, by the end, you'll have some ideas for your own space. I might also mention that I've included a tool list below to help you identify anything you might see and anything that I don't point out during the tour. There will also be a glossary which will help you brush up on some common shop terms that I think will be good to know before we get too far into it. Let's start with a general overview of the space. My shop here is 18 feet wide and 20 feet long this way. This is a pretty sizable space for what we do, but it allows us to have multiple guys working in here at once without running over each other. A few years ago, I worked in a space that was about a third the size of this, and that was great when I was by myself. It took only a few steps to get around, but when I got to get around. But when I got a workload and someone else came in there to help me, it wasn't. When I got a heavy workload, but when I got a lot of workload, steps to get around. But when I got a lot of workload and someone else came in, but when I got a heavy workload and someone came in to help me, we were stepping all over each other. Cater your space to the amount of volume that you do. Everyone's situation will be different from somebody else's. Do what works best for you. I like to think of my space as three general areas. The first one is this front end section right here. Here we'll have the front counter. Here, yeah, I'll have you start following me at that point. Here. Thanks. The first one is this front end section right here. Here we'll have the front counter. Here, yeah, I'll have you start following me at that point. All right. I like to think of my space for you. I like to think of my space as general sections. For you. I like to think of my space as three general sections. The first is what I call the front end. Here I have my front counter, my computer, where I place and receive orders, manage my inventory, replace some music, and of course, probably the most important piece of equipment in the whole course, probably the most important piece of equipment in the whole shop, the dartboard. Behind me too, I have all of my Here we also keep any stations, one on this end and one on the far end. One on this end and one on the far end. Here we also keep moving on to the middle is what I call the island. The main feature here is our two twin grip stations, one on this end and one on the far end. One on this end and one on the far end. Moving on into the middle is what I call the island. The main feature here is our two twin grip stations, one on this end, twin grip stations, one on this end and one on the far end. One on this end and is our two. The main feature here is our two twin grip stations, one on this end and one on the far end. Stations. One on this end stations, one on this stations, one on this stations, one on this end and one on the far end. The far end. Here we also keep any sort of chemicals, like our epoxy and our acetone. There's a lot of airspace around, so it's well ventilated. On the other side, you may find my shaft inventory underneath. Let's do that one more time. Right. Yeah, let's start from the top. Right. Moving into the middle here is what I call the island. Here we have two identical twin. Moving into the middle here is what I call the island. Here you will find our two grip stations, each equipped with an identical set of tools. You'll also find all of our chemicals, like acetone and epoxy. It's in the middle, so it's in a well-ventilated space. And our two twin grip stations. Moving into the middle here is what I call the island. Here you can space as 3 general sections. The first is what I call the front end. Here I prefer to keep it behind my counter. This just takes a little more organizing for nice stuff. Moving on to the middle is what I call the island, any sort of theft. The main feature here is our 2 twig stations, each on any sort of theft. Moving into the middle here is what I any sort of theft. Any sort of theft. Moving into the middle any sort of theft. Moving into the middle here is what I call the island. Here you will find our 2 grip stations, each equipped with an identical set of tools. You'll also find all of our chemicals, like acetone and epoxy. It's in the middle, so it's in a well-ventilated space. And on the far side, underneath, in all the cardboard boxes, where you'll find all of my shaft inventory. Get my expertise. That brings us into what I call the alley. This is basically our epoxy workflow. A club will start on this wall and work its way down to the end, where it's ready to go back to the customer. This part of the shop is where it's ready to go back to the customer. This part of the shop is the noisiest, the smelliest, and has most of the dangerous tools. So keeping it as far away from the customer as possible gives us the most professional experience. And if you're wondering where my loft and line machine are, they're actually just a couple steps down the hall. We only have one. They're actually just a couple steps down the hall. And if you're wondering where my loft and line machine are, they're actually just a couple steps down the hall. I'm a nice guy, so we end up sharing these machines with our club fitters, and that's kind of the common ground for both of us. Ground for both of us. Now that you get the gist, I want to take you a little deeper into every workflow that I use. Now that you get the gist, let me show you the flow that I use. Now that you get the gist, flow that every club travels. Now that you get the gist, let me show you the workflow that every club travels on, from the moment it enters the shop to the moment it leaves. Along the way, I'll highlight all the stations and the important tools I use. Let's get into that. Get into that.
In 3, 2.
Now let me take you through the life of every club that comes into our shop. Everything starts right here at the front counter. And just like anything else, don't underestimate how important this is. This is where you diagnose and try and help your customer. This is where you diagnose any club that comes in and offer solutions to your customer on what you think is best. The more repairs you do, the better you'll get at looking at a club and deciding the proper way to go. Once you're on the same page as your customer, we use an old... Let me take you through the life of every club that comes into our shop. Everything starts right here at the front counter. And just like anything else, don't underestimate how important this is. This is where you diagnose and try and help your customer. This is where you diagnose any club that comes in and offer solutions to your customer on what you think is best. The more repairs you do, the better you'll get at looking at a club and deciding the proper way to go. Once you're on the same page as your customer, we use an old school method. Manila tags. Here we're going to write down their name, phone number, the date it was taken in, and any information on the scope of work that we're doing in detail. I should be able to give this to another guy and the scope of work in detail. That way, if someone other than me was to pick up the work, they should know exactly what they have to do without asking me any sorts of questions. Once a club is taken in, it can go into one. Once a club is taken in, it can go into one of 3 possible places. Here's our first scenario. A guy dropped off a 9-iron head and didn't also put in a shaft. The issue was, we didn't have the shaft in stock. So here's the tag I wrote for him. Got it. More. Hold on, I kind of want to rephrase that. Okay. Right. Once a club comes in, it can go into one of 3 possible places. The first one is what I call the pending area, and it basically means we don't have a component in stock and we need to order it. Here is a demo tag I wrote up, just so you can see for yourself. Once a club comes in, it can go dropped off. A guy dropped off. Here's our first scenario. A guy dropped off a 9-iron places. Here's our first scenario. Once a club comes in, it can go into one of 3 possible places. The first one is what I call the pending area, and it basically means we don't have a component in stock and we need to order it. Here is a demo tag I wrote up, just so you can see for your. Once a club is taken in, it can go into one of 3 possible places. Here's our first scenario. Once a club comes in, it can go into one of 3. We don't have questions. Once a club comes in, it can go into one of 3 possible places. The first one is what I call the pending area, and it basically means we don't have a component in stock and we need to order it. Here is a demo tag I wrote up, just so you can see for yourself. Just so you can see for yourself. As you can see, I got the customer's name. See for yourself. As you can see, I got the customer's name, phone number, the date. This one's made up. Along with the scope of work, and as you can see at the bottom, I noted that the shaft is on order, along with the date the order was placed. Can loop around. Can loop around now. From here, any club that is waiting on something, will go next to the computer in this general area here. Maybe I want to swoop around here. Comes in, it'll rejoin here. In this case, I'll just put this one on the ground over here. And once the component comes in, it'll rejoin the workflow. On the ground over here. And once the component comes in, it'll rejoin the workflow. Go back. All right. Scenario 2 is what I call the non-epoxy workflow, and it basically just includes any sort of regrips or loft and lie adjustments. Here's a demo tag I wrote for that. As you can see, for the regripping, I wrote the model, the color, the quantity, along with any special instructions I might need. Gripping, color, the model, regripping. I wrote the model, the color, the quantity, along with any special instructions I might need for that set. Grips we need ahead of time for that set. From there, we're going to band up the set, grab the grips we need ahead of time so we don't oversell them, and then I'm going to place them right on the side of the island here. The final scenario is a club that's going right into the epoxy workflow. Basically any sort of extension or reshaft, anything that requires us to mix epoxy. Here's a demo tag I made for this guy. A customer brought in a broken club I made for this guy. Here, I'm gonna say. I made for this guy. In this case, a customer brought in a broken club with an Elevate 95 shaft. The issue is that this shaft isn't made anymore, so we let the customer know we'll get something as close as possible for it. I'm gonna place them right on the side of the island here. The final scenario is a club that's going right into the epoxy workflow. Basically any sort of extension or... In this case, a customer brought in a broken club with an Elevate 94. The final scenario is a club that's going right into the epoxy workflow. Basically any sort of extension or reshaft, anything that requires us to mix epoxy. Here's a demo tag I made for this guy. It requires us to mix epoxy. In this case, a customer brought in a broken club with an Elevate 95 shaft. The issue is that this shaft isn't made anymore, so we let the customer know we'll get something as close as possible for it. Our solution is just the current line of Elevate, which is called the MPH. See how I notated on the tag that will reshaft similar, or as close as possible, along with any of the other special instructions this club might need. In this case, we're going to go half an inch long. In this case, we're just going to go ahead. This club might need. In this case, we're going to go 1/2 inch long. In this case, we're just going to go 1/2 In this case, we're just going to go 1/2 inch long. Same thing. I'm also going to allocate the grip. Same thing. We're just going to go 1/2 inch long. Same thing. I'm also going to allocate the grip. Band all of this stuff together and place it at the start of the epoxy workflow, which is right against the wall here. It's the wall here. Now let me show you a little bit of the non-epoxy workflow and the specific stations inside.
Just relabel these. So that was like almost like the entire intro into that first module. So now we're going into the practical.
Now let me show you a little bit of the non-epoxy workflow and the specific stations inside. The first, and probably the most heavily used station in almost any shop, is our grip station. The specific stations inside. The first, and probably the most heavily used station in almost any shop, is our grip station. Now that you're starting to see the workflow, heavily used area is our grip station. Now that you're starting to see the workflow, let me show you the individual stations that happen inside of each one. First, the 2 non-epoxy stations. This is our regrip station.
Alright, so we redid that.
Which is right against the wall here. Now that you're starting to see the workflow, let me show you the individual stations that happen inside of each one. First, the 2 non-epoxy stations. This is our regrip station, and definitely the most heavily used area of the entire shop. Some of the tools you'll want here are a hook blade, a tape scraper or a torch for removing tape, double-sided grip tape. We use Intertape 591. A good grip solvent. We use HF 100 from Brampton, which is actually a local supplier. And some sort of device to hold the shaft. And last is a good shaft vise. And some sort of device to hold the shaft. And last is a good shaft vise. And last is a good shaft vise. The tools you'll want here are a hook blade, something to remove the tape. We use a custom-made grip scraper, but you can also use a torch to peel off the tape. You'll want replacement tape. This is Intertape 591, double-sided tape, 2-inch thick. Grip solvent. This is the HF 100 from Brampton, which is a local manufacturer in West Hartford. Some sort of vise to hold the shaft in place. And a couple rags are useful as well. As I said earlier, there are some other tools I use in this area, but they will all be included within the tool list. Alright, that's good for that. And our the second station.
So it's all the first station, so just going boom. I can literally just yellow, red, like whatever. It don't matter as long as I'm breaking them up.
The second station in our non-epoxy workflow is the loft and line machines. Here we have 2 Mitchell Golf tour gauge machines. The one on my left is for irons and wedges, and the one on my right is for putters. Each station has 2 putters. Each station has 2 unique bending bars. Probably cut that part out. One of the cool tricks on my right is for putters. Each station has 2 unique bending bars. One of the cool tricks we have here, my right, is for putters. One of the cool tricks we have here, one of the cool parts of our setup here, one of the cool parts of our right is for putters. One of the cool parts of our setup here is the monitor we have mounted above our loft and line machine. We have this hooked up to our computer, so we can easily pull up OEM specs and have them right in front of us as we're working. That way we don't have to use our phone or something that doesn't look as clean.
Yo, by the way, if you are watching the live, if you have joined up, feel free to ask me any questions. Feel free to just drop a comment, just say what's up. That'd be awesome. Not the most, entertaining stuff today. Like, to me, this is entertaining. To a lot of people, it's entertaining. But, yeah, I just wanted to kind of just break down the process, get you guys a visual on how I would go about editing course content. So, really appreciate anybody who joins and just sticks around for the video. So, I'm gonna keep crushing here. Peace.
Now let me show you there's 3 stations. Now let me show you the 3 stations in our epoxy workflow. Every club starts at what I call the disassembly bench. Here we're going to rip the clubs apart and clean out the club heads so they're ready to move on. The tools you're going to want here, this is our shaft puller, which is essential for pulling graphite clubs apart. A couple of different torches, propane, but butane is also handy. You can also use a heat gun if that's your... I use two drills. One is enough. I use 2 drills. Speaking of bits, definitely get a bunch, as well as a wire hosel bit. As well as a wire hosel brush. This is going to be used to clean out all the hosels. Clean out all the hosels.
Didn't really get to focus in on that, but that's all right.
Clean out all the hosels. We actually use an alternative to this, which is basically this. And then we cut a steel rod with a slit cut in it, which is basically a steel rod with a slit cut into it like this. And then we cut squares out of our sandpaper belt, which is 80 grit. This feeds into here like this.
This kid knows a lot about regripping a club. Everything.
Goes into the drill.
My boy Bryce.
And that's how we clean out hosels. If you're doing a high volume, this might be a system that you might want to look into. But if you're just doing a few clubs, this is probably just fine.
If you're into golf, follow Chris Cody's golf shop.
I might also mention that this is where most of the craziest smells. I might also mention is where most of the craziest. I might also mention that nastiest smells of the shop. I might also mention this is where most of the nastiest smells of the shop will come from. It's usually burning epoxy, but you'll get used to it. Moving on is our prep station, which I would classify as this general area here. Once clubs are pulled apart, we gotta get them ready again for epoxy. This is gonna be all of our shaft cutting, or swing weighting, any sort of prep work that we still have left before epoxy. You're definitely gonna want a ruler, a swing weight machine, and something to help you make cuts. This is a bench grinder I use from Mitchell Golf. You have your cutoff wheel on the left and a sanding belt on the right. I might also mention our dust collection system, which I would highly, highly recommend something if you're doing a lot of cutting. My version is pretty simple. I have this current sensing switch down low that's hooked up to my shop vac. Basically, anytime the bench grinder gets turned on, so does the shop vac. Let me show you real quick. You know what? My name's unplugged. Basically, anytime the bench grinder gets turned on. Basically, anytime the bench grinder gets, you're doing a lot of. My version is pretty simple. I have this current sensing switch down low that's hooked up to my shop vac. Basically, anytime the wheel on the left and sanding belt on the right. I might also mention our dust collection system, which I would highly, highly recommend something if you're doing a lot of cutting. My version is pretty simple. I have this current sensing switch down low that's hooked up to my shop vac. Basically, anytime the bench grinder gets turned on, so does the shop vac. Let me show you. Cutting. My version is pretty simple. I have this current sensing switch down low that's hooked up to my shop vac. Basically, anytime the bench grinder gets turned on, so does the shop vac. Let me show you. Then it just takes a few seconds to turn off. Do that one more time. Back. Let me show you. Turn off. Let me do that one more time. Let me show you. Shop vac. Let me show you. Shop vac. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. Good luck editing that. And then it chooses to turn off. Nah, it's probably right here. The final station is going to be our epoxy station. This is where it's all going to come together. I use epoxy from Branton as well, where I get my hair salted. They offer 3 different cure times: a 10-minute, a 1 hour, and a 24 hour. The 1 hour quick cure is my workhorse. It's the right blend of speed and strength. The one I use the second most is the rapid cure. This is good in a pinch if you have someone waiting for an extension or just a quick reshaft. This is the best if you have someone waiting for an extension or just a quick. This is good in a pinch if you have someone waiting for an extension or just a quick reshaft. This is the best if you have someone waiting for an extension or cure. The cure. This is the best is the rapid cure. This is the best if you have someone waiting for an extension or quick reshaft. You can get back in just a few minutes. The 24-hour long cure, I hardly ever use long cure. I hardly ever use, but it is nice to have just in case you get a guy with really fast swing speed or some sort of club that's being used. These types of epoxy fit into this epoxy gun. Everything gets dispensed from this epoxy. Types of epoxy fit into everything gets to an ounce size. Everything gets dispensed from this epoxy gun. This is the 1.5 fluid ounce size. And everything will get mixed on these epoxy sheets right here. This is super useful because once you're done with one sheet, you just rip off the top here. That was a struggle. And voila, you have a whole new sheet. New sheet. Where the clubs can dry. Somewhere where the sheet. You'll also want somewhere where the clubs can dry. So we have a couple of drying racks just under the window here. Sitting there. Window here. That way the clubs aren't disturbed. Window here. That way the clubs aren't disturbed. Once a club is done, we're going to send it up to the front counter so we can call the customer and let them know that it's ready. It'll also be set aside up there. It'll also be set aside until the customer can come pick it up. Once a club is done, it'll also be set aside until the customer can come pick it up. Once a club is done, it's ready. It'll also be set aside up there. It'll also be set aside. It'll also be to the customer and let them know that it's ready. It'll also be set aside until the customer can come pick it up. Once a club is done, we're going to send it up to the front counter so we can notify the customer that their club is ready to pick up. I hope you can, now that you know that it's ready. Once a club is done, we're going to send it up to the front counter so we can notify the customer that their club is ready to pick up. Now that you've seen my setup, I hope you can... Now that you've seen my setup, I hope you... Now that you've seen what might work for you, pick up. Now that you've seen my setup, I hope you have a few ideas of what might work for you. Time and thought. Totally worth a little bit of time and thought. It's totally worth a little bit of time and thought. In the next lesson, the last lesson in the intro, we're going to go over tips before we... In the next lesson, the last lesson in the intro, we're going to go over everybody's favorite. Just a couple of safety tips before we get into the hands-on work. See you there. All right, hands-on work. See you there.
Ooh,
The last thing we...
That's a lot of cuts. Alright, we're probably like, what, 1/8, 1/16? Yikes.
we need to go over before we get hands-on is just a few safety rules. My father's favorite quote, rules. My father's favorite quote, safety rules. My father's favorite quote, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Doing these things right from the start will keep you safe. Club repair is totally safe when done right. Just be smart about it from the start and you'll keep yourself safe. I've included safety rules. My father's favorite quote, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Doing these things right from the start will keep you safe. Club repair is totally safe when done right. Just be smart about it from the start and you'll keep yourself safe. I've included a resource below that you can print out and hang up in your shop if you like. That just posts a few reminders. That just post a few reminders about things we're about to go over. The first thing, and the most commonly used rule, is wear eye protection. Anytime you're running, standing, using an air compressor, really anything that could throw debris unexpectedly, you should have these things. Keep a pair on you or within reach at almost any station that you have. Kind of come back to heat. While heat is one of the most useful, is heat. Next up is heat. While heat is the most useful tools in the shop, it can cause a lot of issues really fast. Definitely separate it from anything that could be flammable, like some of the other chemicals in the shop. Next up is heat. While heat is one of the most useful tools that we have here in the shop, not careful with it. Too much of it can damage or all my anything flammable. Be aware of that from the start. Also separate it from anything on the island. I've also found it handy to have some... It might be even smarter in case you have to hand... I've also found it handy to have some sort of oven mitt or heat-resistant glove on hands at all times, just in case you have to handle a hot component. It might be even smarter to have a fire extinguisher sitting around somewhere. It might be even smarter to have a fire extinguisher. It might be even smarter to have a fire extinguisher. It might be even smarter to have a face, although I've never had to use one myself. The final warning about heat is a pretty rare occurrence, but there are occasions where you go to heat up a club head and the fire will ignite. This normally happens on older Japanese model clubs, so be aware of it. If it does happen, it's hard to see coming, so if it does happen, don't panic. Just smother the flame with a damp cloth or take the club out and bring it somewhere where it can burn out safely. Don't let me scare you. This has happened to me, I think, twice out of thousands of clubs that have taken apart. That's good for heat. Next up is going to be chemicals. For us, that's mainly acetone and maybe a little bit of epoxy. Always avoid skin contact when possible. When dealing with acetone, I like to store it in a plunger can so I can control how much that I get. This is easier to control down on the top here, as opposed to pouring it out in the container here. I like to wear butyl gloves if I'm dealing with a high amount. I like to wear butyl gloves. I like to wear butyl gloves if I'm dealing with a high volume of acetone. I like to wear butyl gloves if I'm dealing with a high volume of acetone, just for another layer of protection. HF100 from Ramton is non-flammable and non-toxic. If you're using if you're using an alternative, you should check out what it is. You should check out what it is. If you're using an alternative, what's in it? If you're using an alternative, just be aware of what's in it. I've heard stories that back in the day they used to use gasoline and kerosene and all these crazy minerals and spirits. For years, and so I'm grateful that I get this stuff because I've used spirits. So I'm grateful that I get this stuff because I've used it for years and my hands are totally clean. That's good. Is always keep your blades fresh. And the last part is blades and rotating tools. The first thing is always keep your blades fresh. If they get dull, they may tend to slip or grab, and that can lead to a lot of issues. If you're using any sort of rotating tool, like cutoff wheel and mesh grinder, always be aware of where your hands are. Never wear any sort of dangling jewelry or loose sleeves, or really anything that could get caught into the blade. If you're using a hook into the blade. If you're using a hook knife or a utility knife, always make sure you're cutting away from yourself. Every cut you make, take your time. Every cut you make, just take your time and stay focused on what you're doing. All right, that's good there.
Good.
And then we'll match that up into something good, and then just a cut job. Second nature, like focused on what you're doing.
2.
And that's really all you need to know. As we said earlier, good habits at the start will turn into second nature later. Also remember that we'll have the safety icon appearing on screen throughout the lessons, just to keep you aware, just to keep you aware of anything that could be, just to keep you aware of anything, just to keep you aware of it, just to keep you aware, just to keep you aware of anything that could, just to keep you aware of anything that could be potential danger. The other resource below goes over a couple other disclaimers. The other resource below goes over a couple of that I'd ask you to go over quickly. That I'd ask you to go over that I'd ask you to just go over quickly. That disclaimers that I'd ask you to go over quickly before moving on. In the next lesson, we'll start hands-on with our first skill, regrip. Welcome in all of club repair. Welcome to module 2. In this module, we're going to go over the most essential skill in all of club repair, regripping. If you're an enthusiast just getting started, this is the perfect started. This is the perfect place started. This is the perfect place started. This is the perfect place for you. If you're in the golf industry and you're looking for a skill you can learn pretty easily to make yourself more valuable, this is a perfect skill for you. To know your basic for you. By the end of this module, you're not only going to know your basic regripping technique, you're also going to know all about diameters and tape buildups, like buildups, other tricks for gripping, like saving grips and using air, as well as how to deal with some other putter grips, as well as how to deal with different types of putter grips, as well as how to deal with types of putter grip air, as well as how to deal with different types of putter grips. For all the tools you'll need, see the resource below. Let's get into it. That's perfect. That's like a little. That's perfect. That's like a little 20-second intro video. I like that. About time we get hands. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. About time we get hands-on with something. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you your super basic regripping technique. The tools you're going to want: your hook blade and utility knife, tape scraper or torch to remove tape, your grip solvent, double-sided grip tape, vise, rags, and of course, a couple clubs and grips. We're going to split this up into 5 main steps. Step 1, for starters, take your hook blade and the club in your left hand and just make one good slit away from yourself. Once you've done that, you should just be able to peel the grip right off with your thumb, and it should just attach, as simple as that. If the grip you just pulled off is if the grip you just pulled off is in good condition, and a pretty common model, it might be good to save it for a future module. It might be good to save it for our swing weighting module for a future module. To save it for a future model, it might be a pretty common model. It might be good to save it for our swing weighting module.
Well, hello there.
Come here.
Why?
I said so.
Say hi to the live stream. What's up?
Our swing weighting module. If not, just throw it out. For our swing weighting module. If not, just throw it out. Throw it out. If a grip is really sticky or oversized, it might help to cut 2 splits. I would do one on one side and then flip it 180 degrees and do another on the other side. That way you can kind of split up the grip into 2. Kind of split up these and do another on the other side. That way you can kind of on the other side. That help to cut 2 slits. I would do one on one side and then flip it 180 degrees and do another on the other side. That way you can kind of split up the grip into 2. This will protect. Sweet. Once you're done cutting off all your grips, make sure you put your hook blade away entirely. That way, entirely. That way, this will protect you from any sort of incident later. Step 2, incident later. Step 2 is going to be removing the grip tape. This is where our custom-made scraper comes into play. I like to just put the club against my left leg and kind of brace it against the ground, and then scrape down like that. Grab the other scraper. Step 2 is going to be removing the. Step 2 is going to be removing the. Make sure you put your hook blade away entirely. That way, this will protect you from any sort of incident later. Step 2 is going to be removing the grip tape. This is where. Step 2 is going to be removing the grip tape. This is where our custom-made scraper comes into play. I like to just put the club against my left leg and kind of brace it against the ground, and then scrape down like that. Step 2 is going to be removing the old tape. The reason we do this is because if you were to go install a grip on the old tape, it'll probably stick or not seat right. It's better to start fresh. If you put a new piece of tape over the old tape, you're going to increase the diameter. Is going to be removing the grip tape. This is what incident later. Step 2, removing the old tape. Incident later. Step 2 is going to be removing the old tape. The reason we do this is because if you were to go install incident later. Step 2 is going to be removing the old tape. The reason we do this is because if you were to go install a grip on the old tape, it'll probably stick or not seat right. It's better to start fresh. If you put a new piece of tape over the old tape, you're going to increase the diameter of the grip as well. It's best to start from scratch. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg, and the ground. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg and the ground. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg and the ground, and then scratch. I like to take the club, brace it against scratch. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg and the ground. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg and the scratch. I like to take the club, brace it against my left leg and the ground, and then the scraper, you just kind of push down. The first time you do this, down. The first time you do this, you might slip a little bit. It takes a little bit to learn the technique. But you can see how quick and easy that was to remove all the tape. Some people get concerned with the residue that's left over from the scraper. I would tell you not to worry about this too much, as it won't have any impact on the final diameter of your grip. The final diameter of your grip. The alternative to scraping is using heat. All you're going to do is heat up the tape and then peel it off. Peel it off. Especially a little bit of paper, but it's leaving it as already. All you're going to do, diameter of your grip. The alternative to scraping is using heat. All you're going to is using heat. Diameter of the grip. The alternative to the scraper is diameter of your grip. The alternative to the scraper is using heat. Basically just heat the tape up for a few seconds and then peel it off. As you can see, this will leave a little bit less residue, but I find it to be a lot less efficient than just using the scraper. I also want to add that when you're cutting or removing the tape, the technique is exactly the same with graphite. You just have to be a lot more careful. If you're too aggressive with the knife, you'll definitely scratch it. Even in this position here, if you put too much force with your left hand, you might snap the shaft right over your leg. So just be cautious. The next step is to get the tape back on the club. The next step is to apply fresh tape onto the club. Here we're going to get the club into our vise. I like to get the toe pointing straight up to the sky. Here, maybe come get a shot. Look at it down the barrel. The next step is to apply fresh tape onto the club. Here we're going to get the club into our vise. I like to get the toe pointing straight up to the sky. Look at it down the barrel. Pointing that toe straight up will help your alignment later. And place it right against the dispenser. Your alignment later. For the tape, grab your grip and place it right against the machine. Grab your grip and place it right against tape. Grab your grip and right again. Grab your grip for the tape. Grab your grip and place it right against the dispenser. Then measure out a piece of tape that's just longer than the grip. Then rip it off. Take your grip again and now place it up against the shaft. I'm looking at where the grip ends. From here, I'm going to remember a point in my mind, kind of right at the end of the old residue. And that's where I'm going to start my new tape. I pull back with my left thumb, and then I work out. And then I work out, kind of wrapping the tape around. I go left first, and then the right. Avoid any wrinkles. You're really just on the right. You're really just trying to avoid any wrinkles at this stage. And you can pinch this stage. Any excess on the butt end, you can pinch, twist it up, and kind of stuff it into the shaft a little bit. Now we're ready to install our grip. Cover up the vent hole in the back. Shake up your solvent a little bit, and give it a few good squirts. Then, toss it around like a bartender, and apply the solvent onto the tape. I like to favor the butt end slightly, as the grip will act like a squeegee once you go to install it. When you're ready to install, if it's your first time installing a grip, this is probably a good ready to install it. When you're ready to install, if it's your first time installing a grip, the rag, install it. If it's your first time installing a grip, this is probably a good time for the rag. As you get better, for the rag. As you get better, for the rag. For the rag. As you get better, you may not need the rag, as you'll go through a lot of them if you rely on it too much. Hold the butt end of the grip in the rag. Pinch with your left hand. And then push the grip on until you feel it bottom out entirely. The label should just fall off naturally, but if it doesn't, you just cut it off. You can just cut it off. Then, grab a loose grip and compare the length this way. As you can see, I'm pretty darn close, but I'm slightly short, so I'm just going to stretch this out the bottom here until all the markings line up perfectly. That looks good to me. The final step is our alignment. I prefer to line up the club. Is our alignment. I prefer to line up the club outside of the vise. So I'll put it on the ground like this, and then I'll look down the barrel this way. On these Tor Velvet grips, there are 3 points that I'm looking at. The notch up top, the logo, and the notch down below. You want all these to line up dead straight. Face. Dead straight, right at the first groove on the face. Once you're happy with it, it's good to double check that you got the club. It's good to double check that you got the grip seated on properly. To do this, once you're happy with it, it's good to double check that you got the club. It's good to double check it. It's good to double check that you get the grip seated on properly. To do this, turn it around. Properly. To do this, turn it around and tamp the butt end. You should get a nice solid thud if the grip is all the way installed. If it's not, all the way installed. If it's not, maybe go look down the club this way, like straight down, so you can see what the alignment is. Right, so like the lens was pointing straight down, so like you're looking right down the club. There you go. See the logo. There you go. That's it. There you go. You see the logo. There you go. That's it right there. That'll be good B-roll. HUD if the grip is all the way installed. You see the logo. There you go. That's it right there. Good B-roll. Okay. Let's see. As I said, once you get good at doing install. As I said, once you get good at doing grips, you probably won't want to use the rag anymore. If you have a catch pan, use the rag anymore. If you have a catch pan and you can control the speed that you install the grip, you can recycle a lot of solvent and not use any rags. All the excess just dribbled out into the catch pan and it'll go down into the tube where I can filter it later and reuse it. Later and reuse it. Maybe get a shot of it later and reuse it. Maybe get a shot and reuse it. Maybe a shot of it. Yeah, like the catch pan and the tube going into the. Great. Okay. And then I just want to do. Okay. Back up. For it later and reuse it. Okay. And then I just want to do. You probably don't want to get this.
Oh, okay.
After. All right. So this is going to go right after where I measured the tape and installed it. One of the common beginner mistakes I see. This leads us into our first beginner. Don't use this. All right. So we probably don't get this. Oh, don't use this. Okay. So this is going to go right after, like, where I measured the tape and installed it. So this is going to go right after, like, where I measured the tape and installed it. Down into the tube, where I can filter it later. After, like, so this go after. One of the common beginner. Where I can filter it later and reuse it. One of the common beginner mistakes I see. This leads us into our. This leads us into our first beginner mistake. If you're lazy measuring the tape or where you install it, you'll end up with something like this, where the length of the tape is longer than the grip. If you happen to do this and you're working with a steel shaft, no need to panic. That's when you're going to grab your utility knife and just score around the bottom of the grip. Once you got a good line in, once you got a good line, once you got a good line, once you got a good line in there, once you've scored it, line in there, once you've got a good line in there, once you've scored it, once you've scored it, just be able to remove it. Once you've scored it, with a little assistance from, once you've scored it, with a little assistance from your scraper, you should just be able to remove the excess tape like that. Tape like that. And then that'll be, there's a lot of plate. You should just be able to remove the excess tape like that. This is absolutely the most common beginner mistake that I see. At first glance, this grip looks like it's totally fine. But upon closer inspection, a little wiggle at the butt end, and you can see there's a lot of play there. That means this grip hasn't been seated all the way. The other way to check is to turn it around and tamp it. You'll feel a way different sound. You'll hear a way different grip that's properly tamp it. You'll hear a way different sound than a grip that's properly installed. Unfortunately, to fix this, you're probably going to have to remove the grip and reinstall it. All right, that's good. Remember when doing your alignment that you only have a few minutes until the grip solvent dries up. As long as you're diligent, this should be plenty of time to get everything calibrated correctly. After about 30 minutes, the club will be ready to hit. Right. So we toss that into step 5, and then all right. If you're totally new, I recommend you do a few clubs. As you can see, tossing on grips really isn't that hard. In minutes, the club will be ready to hit. As you can see, tossing on grips really isn't that hard, and it's a perfect entry point for learning club repair. If you're totally new, I recommend you do a few clubs before you move on, just so you can get a feel for everything. With a little bit of practice, you'll be a natural in no time. In the next lesson, we'll get more into the details of grips. Details of grips. In the next lesson, we'll get more into the diameter in no time. In the next lesson, we'll get more into the details of grips. How you can really add precision by controlling the diameter of the grip. How you can add precision by controlling the diameters with tape buildups, course sizes, and shaft diameters. See you there. See you there. See you there.
3. 2.
Now that you know your basic regripping technique, it's time to go over all the
Let me go ahead and copy that first color grade I did on here.
size. In the rare scenario, the ring.
It was super bright.
And a...
First, let's refresh on ID and OD, which is basically D. Which is basically OD, which is basically inside diameter and outside diameter. This applies to the shaft and the grip. If you imagine the ring right here, the OD would be the measurement on the outside of the ring, and the ID would be the measurement on the inside of the ring. With shafts, the ODs might vary from shaft to shaft. With shafts, the ODs might vary. With shafts, the OD side of the ring. With shafts, the ODs might vary. That's the root cause why not all standard grips will install at that exact 0.9. The most common shaft OD is 0.60 inches, but they can get thicker, usually with stiffer products. The first that come to mind are Dynamic Gold X7 and LA Golf shafts. And they can also come out thinner, which would usually softer. They can also come out golf shafts. They can also come out thinner, which would usually be your softer, lighter graphite shafts. When it comes to grip, we're looking more at the ID. We're looking more at the ID. We're looking more at the ID. In the industry, we're going to refer to this as the core size. Grip manufacturers make up for the fact that there's different grips. If you marry up the right core size to the right shaft diameter, you'll get your perfect 900. You'll get your perfect 900. You'll get your perfect 900. Just like 600 is the most common shaft diameter, 60 round is the most common grip diameter. Everything is usually on the label of the grip. As you can see, the 60R.
Yep, we got it.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, we got it.
If the shaft 60R, if the shaft label is missing, you can actually pinch the mouth of the grip and and look in on the words there. They're a little too small for the camera to see, but if you shine a light and take a look, you can probably find it yourself. Then the question becomes, what happens if the grips aren't married? The question becomes, what happens, and the question becomes, the core size. The question becomes, what happens if the core size of the grip doesn't match the shaft diameter? Well, the plane size is going to change. Here we have a match the shaft diameter. Well, match the shaft diameter. Well, the playing size is going to change. Here we have another chart that illustrates all of the combinations possible. The shaft diameter. Well, the playing size is going to change. Here we have another chart that illustrates all of the combinations possible. This assumes no extra tape. No extra tape. This assumes no extra tape. As you can see, we have our three most common core sizes, 58 round and 60 round. The two most common, we have our three most common core sizes, 58 round and 60 round. The two most common core sizes are 58 round, it's really hard to, there's no extra tape. As you can see, the two most common core sizes are 58 round and 60 round, but 62 round does exist, but it's really hard to find. As far as shaft diameters, 0.58, again for your lighter graphites, 600 being the most common, and then the 0.62 just to represent anything that's thicker. If you want to know, sure, use your calipers or go to the OEM's website to check the shaft diameter. In general, a smaller core on a bigger shaft will lead to a thicker playing size, while a larger core on a thinner grip, while a larger core on a thinner shaft will lead to a smaller playing size. In the rare scenario where you get the 62 round and the 58 as you can see in the bottom right corner where the 62 round grip meets up with the 580. As you can see in the bottom right corner where the 62 round grip meets up with the 580 shaft, you probably shouldn't even install this as there's just too much room between the grip and the playing size. In the rare scenario where you get the 62 round and the 58 size. In the rare scenario where you get the 60 and as you can see in the bottom right corner where the 62 round grip, you can see in the bottom right corner where the 62 as you can see in the bottom right corner where the 62 round grip meets up with the 580 shaft between the grip and the shaft, and it'll probably never see properly without extra tape.
In the bottom right corner.
Alright, that's probably good for that. Yeah, I don't know, we can leave room on the right. Wait, so on the graph, okay. Alright, so let's, use. Now let me show you without extra tape. Now let me show you the method that you can use to best control. Show you the method. Let me show you the method that you can use to best control your final grip size, and that's going to be tape buildup. Now, the thing to look out for here is what I'll show you is how my tape is. For here is what I'll show you is buildups. Now, the thing to look out for here is what I'll show you is how my tape works. Different, it might be tape buildups. What I'll show you is how my tape works. But if you're using something different, it might be thinner or thicker, so it might translate to a different amount of reps. I found with the Intertape 591 do adds about 0.008 inches to the final size. Meaning, if I wanted to get a grip from standard to mid-size, I'd probably have to add tape. Again, it's all dependent on how thick your tape is, and it also has a little bit to do with the type of grip you're using, as some might squish the tape a little bit more than others. Let's say in this scenario, but I wanted to get half the size. As we know, standard is 0.90 inches and mid-size is 0.96. Using that logic, I know if I do about 4 total wraps of tape, I should get somewhere in that 0.93 area. When you're installing the tape, it's really critical you alternate where the seams of the tape end up. If you were to install every piece of tape in the exact same spot, you might develop a ridge or a crease in one spot of the grip, and we don't want that. Since the first piece of tape, since the first piece of tape has the seam underneath, I'm going to do the second piece of tape with the seam on the top. As you start to get good, you might realize that the amount the tape overlaps is a good clue to what size you're currently at. As you can see here, I have just a little bit of overlap, which is a great clue to I'm just over that. Third piece of tape, just over that. Great clue to I'm just over that. Which is a great clue, just a little bit differently at. As you can see here, I have just a little bit of overlap. Just a little bit of overlap. Third piece of tape, we're going to alternate it again. Third piece of tape, we're going to alternate it again. And the last piece of tape, we'll go back to the first spot. As you can see here, now I don't even have a full overlap. That's my clue that I'm right at full overlap. That's my clue that I'm right about at the diameter I want it to be. Extra tape will expand the grip. Extra tape may expand the grip. Extra tape may stretch the grip Extra tape a little bit. So extra tape may stretch the grip a little bit. So be careful if you're installing something with a seam or any sort of corded texture, as it might make it a little more difficult. Here are these velvets, still slide on pretty easily. You still want to measure. And then I'll measure to make sure the length is right. And then align. As you can see, the four wraps of tape got me just over that 0.93 number, which is halfway in between standard and mid-size. Exactly what I was going for. In the scenario where you have a customer that comes in and likes and likes the thickness of their grip, but can't remember how many wraps of tape are underneath. That's where your calipers really come in handy. You can go up there, measure the grip right in front of him, and assure him that you can match the diameter exactly. Calipers are your best friend when coming. Calipers are your best friend when doing grips. Calipers really are your best friend when it comes to doing grips with precision. That's good. Let me just give you a. Can you focus on the labels? If you're wondering what the letter is after the 60, that's telling you if the grip is round or ribbed. As you can see with the grip below, there's an X. This is one of the Align models from Golf Pride, which has a visible rib. Not all ribs are visible, so always keep your eyes out for that letter. For that letter. We'll be able to work that in.
Yes, sir.
The other kind of tape buildup is your low hand buildup. A player will use this if your low hand buildup. A player will use this if they want to remove some of the taper effect out of the grip. Let's say in this case, our customer wants to do total wraps and 2 low hand wraps. Just like we did with the full wraps, if you're adding in low hand wraps, you still want to alternate what you're doing. I'm going to start with a low hand wrap again, and 2 low hand wraps. Just like we did with the full wraps, if you're adding in low hand wraps, you still want to alternate what you're doing. Again, and 2 low hand wraps. If you're adding in low hand wraps, you still want to alternate what you're doing. I'm going to start with a low hand wrap. Again, I'm measuring where the tape's going to start. And then I'll add a full wrap. Seams end up. Wrap. Again, I'm just going to alternate a little bit where these seams end up. Then low wrap number 2. And full wrap number 2. Again, alternating half wraps and full wraps will protect you from any sort of ridge forming in the middle of the tape. Try to end on a full wrap if possible. Then, once you install, you'll have a grip that has some of the taper removed. Okay, taper removed. Okay. Okay. The last technique you should know about is stretching. Now, this is one I almost never use, but it's good to know in case you get the rare guy that wants a thinner feeling grip on his club. The only thing that's going to change is once your grip is installed and you go to measure it, you're actually just going to push this down as much as you can. Grips are pretty elastic, so they're probably going to want to come back a little bit. So keep working it until it gives up. And see, as you can see, I got a decent half-inch stretch here. If you keep working it, you could probably get more. But it's all up to the feel that you're after. And if you're curious, that little stretch got this grip size to just under that little stretch got this grip size to just under 0.89. So, and let me as you can see, 9.
3, 2, yep.
When it comes to selecting a proper grip size for yourself or for your customer, this is my method. I like to start with a simple chart like this. For your customer, this is my method. I like to start with a simple chart like this, where you measure someone's hand size. As you can see, I sneak right into the red zone, which is going to be standard. That doesn't have to be your final decision, but it's a great baseline to start. From here, I would suggest, from here, it's probably good you experiment, or remember, that's just your baseline. Everyone puts their hands on the club a little differently, and everyone has a little bit different ball flight. I like to let feel. I like to let feel. Everyone puts shit. All right, let me start that over. White. Yeah, that's it.
2, and yep.
Now let me show you my method real quick to determining what the proper group size is for somebody. I like to start with a really.
Yep.
Now let me show you my method real quick to now let me show you my method real quick to determining what the proper grip size is for somebody. I like to start with a really simple chart like this, where you can just have the person put their hands on it and see where they measure. For me, I get right into this standard size. For me, I get right into this standard. For me, I get right in the middle here. Measure into. For me, I get right into this standard size zone in the middle here. Since everyone puts their hands on the club a little bit differently, this is really just your starting point. After that, see what feels comfortable to them. Ask them questions about their ball flight. Thicker grips might prevent a miss to the left for a right-handed player, and vice versa. Right-handed player, and vice versa. Again, that's just a rule of, and vice versa. Again, it's just a rule of thumb, but I found it to be helpful in some cases. Feel and light determine the decision.
Three, two.
Well, most of the detail. Now that you understand the details, you should be able to handle most of the technical questions that come your way. I know it might be a lot to remember, but it should be expected out of a professional. In the next lesson, we're going to add a couple more tricks to solve it. Questions that come your way. I know it might be a lot to remember. But it should be expected out of a professional. In the next lesson, we're going to add a couple more tricks to your toolkit by saving grips and using air as an alternative to solve.
3, 2.
Now that you know your regripping fundamentals, we're going to start to add some advanced tricks. In this lesson, we're going to teach you how to save and reinstall a grip, as well as using air compressor to blow on grips. The tools you're going to want for saving grips is some sort of shim tool like this and a couple of racks, as well as your grip solvent. And for the air installs, you'll want your air compressor with some sort of golf grip attachment, painter's tape, and some safety glasses. Let's start with how to save grips. That's good. I'm gonna swing. Good. The first thing you're going to want to start with how to save grips. The first thing you're going to want to do is assess the grip that you're going to attempt to assess the grip that you is assess the grip that you is assess the grip that you're going is to assess the grip that you're going to attempt to save. What I want to do is assess the grip that you're going is to assess that you're gonna is to assess the grip that you're gonna attempt to save. So there's a lot of factors to consider here. The most important being the texture of the grip and how long it's been on the club. I'm gonna make it super easy for myself. This is a grip we literally just installed, so it should be pretty simple to pull off. It's good to know that some textures are going to be really difficult to save. Polymer grips, like all the wind grips, don't stretch very well, so these are going to give you a real hard time. Even if you do manage to save them, you might stretch the middle of the core. On the other side, corded grips like the Z-Cord from Golf Pride is kind of the same. You can definitely save these, but it's going to be a lot trickier because the core doesn't stretch as well. What's up, Mike? So to save the grip, I'm going to get back into the position that I used to scrape the tape. The first thing we're going to look for is getting this little tool underneath the mouth of the grip. If you can manage, try to take a peek in there and see if you can see the grip tape. Ideally, you can get this tool in between the tape and the grip. If you don't, the tape might come off right with the grip. Once you get started, add a few squirts of solvent. The biggest mistake here is not being generous enough with the solvent. If the tool is having a tough time going down, it's probably too dry. Once you get started, just use short jabs and work your way around. If it starts to tense up, again, use more solvent. The grip might get a little more solvent. The grip might get a little messy, but we'll dry it out later. By the time the tool hits the bottom, you should be able to twist it and pull it right off. There you go. It's as simple as that. And there you go. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. One that's a little harder. What's up, dude? We're live right now. That's my boy Lamp. Okay. No, it ain't. He's different now. No, it ain't. He's different now. Once you pull off the grip, it'll be a little wet, so grab a paper towel, try and hand dry it, and then maybe let it sit out for a few minutes so it can evaporate. It'll be back in playing condition in no time. Great. It'll be back to dry it, and then paper towel, try and hand dry it, and then maybe let it sit out for a few minutes so it can evaporate. It'll be back in playing condition in no time. Here I'm going to show you just another example gripping fundamental super stroke putter grip. So just another example of saving a grip. This is a super stroke putter grip. So this is going to be a lot more difficult than the tour ball that we just pulled off. Even just getting the tool started is a little tighter. Here I'm going to be super liberal with the solvent and just slowly work my way down. Usually just getting this thing started is the hardest part. As you can see, I'm going to use really short jabs. Sometimes you just got to be patient with these. we go. Same thing, I'm just gonna hand dry this one and then let it sit out for a few minutes so it can evaporate. So being a lot thinner than normal. It's still possible to save, but you just gotta be so it can evaporate. This one and then let it sit out for a few minutes so it can evaporate.
3, 2, 1, yes sir.
The last scenario I'm gonna show you is a lady's grip. Now, this is an undersized grip, so the amount of rubber is... So the thickness of the rubber ends up being a lot thinner than normal. It's still possible to save, but you just gotta be really careful that you don't puncture, through the grip. With these cases, I'm really gonna take my time and just go slowly. Luckily for me, this one is pretty easy. If it's giving you a hard time though, just use extra solvent and go slowly. Once you're ready to go reinstall the grip you saved, do yourself a favor. Look through this vent hole and see if you can see light. Sometimes tape might clog this up. Let's see light. Sometimes tape a favor. Look through this vent hole and see a favor. Look through this vent hole and see if you can see light. Sometimes tape might clog this up, and if that happens, the solvent won't be able to escape. After that, the grip won't seat properly once you install it. The other thing I want you to be aware of is sometimes while saving grips, it might expand the core. The thing I want you to be aware of is sometimes while saving grips, it might expand the core. That's usually the case with these super stroke grips. That's just because of the material they're made out of. If that happens, all you gotta do is add a couple extra pieces made out of. If that happens, all you gotta do is add a couple extra pieces of tape. If that happens, all you gotta do is add a couple extra pieces of tape to your buildup, and you'll be totally fine. If I'll normally do 3 pieces. If I save a super stroke putter grip, I'll normally do 3 pieces of tape just to be safe. Three pieces is plenty to where the grip will definitely seat, but not too much. Definitely seat, but not too much to where you'll feel it's super nose, but not too much to where you'll feel a super noticeable difference with the size of the grip. Even installing that difference with the size of the grip. Even installing that one, I could feel how much easier it was than installing a fresh super stroke. And it still feels totally normal. Okay, that's good. Probably cut that there.
Yep. 2.
Now there's that. Now let's talk about air installs. Now there's definitely a few pros and cons that you should know about. The best part about doing air is the club is ready to hit immediately after the grip is installed. 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 After the grip is installed. After the grip is installed. installed. Immediately after the grip is installed. Immediately after the grip is installed. On the other side, just like saving grips, not all models of grips are not all models of grips, saving grips, not grips, not all models of grips are easily blown off. Anything corded models of grips are easily grips. Not all models of grips are easily blown off. Anything corded or those wind polymer textures are basically not going to blow on at all. Definitely stick a softer, stretchier models. Anytime you're using air, it's important to be wearing your safety glasses. Let me have you come up to the machine. Probably get you to look at these dials in here. Too much air too fast once your tank is full of air, I like to set my PSI somewhere around 40. Be careful with this, because if you have too much air too fast can lead to a grip bursting.
All right. Well, that will do it for this stream. Oh, not too much engagement, not too much activity in the chat, just pure, just locked inness on this one. Just want to say, anyone who stopped by, thank you so much for watching. Yeah, this is just literally just a way for me to time how long I'm editing, and also just make some content and try to provide some sort of value all at the same time. And, you know, having that stream on at the same time with me editing just kind of helps me stay and feel locked in, simply put. And, you know, I want to help you guys along the way. So yeah, I'm gonna sign off now, head over to my grandma's. It's her birthday. Very excited for that. Very excited to continue creating content and helping you guys out in any way possible. You know, self-expression and creativity is something that once we kind of unleash, it allows us to enhance our lives in any way, to be at the forefront of anyone's minds. You know, when we do express our creativity and we do show our love for whatever it is that we do. So whatever you do, go for it, show it, love it, breathe it, and, you know, kind of revolve around it. That's my 2 cents for today. It's December 1st. We're ending on this fourth quarter strong. I'm going to probably wrap up the rest of this. Looks like we made it about halfway. We're halfway there. And the rest should be moving smoothly. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you did, if you're watching on the rerun, appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day or night. And peace. That will do it for the stream.